Are there things that would make sense for us to do right now that would move us beyond this easily manipulated conventional mindset? To not only expand our consciousness beyond the influence of many of the devices used by the forces for involution, but also help us see what human consciousness is and what it is capable of to move us with eyes wide open in full awareness of what's happening to a future with promise and, most importantly, independence. Probably Einstein's most famous quote posits, "No problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it." So let's take actions to move out of conventional consciousness and begin to glimpse what lies ahead. Here are some ideas I learned from studying those who are more progressed along the path to help us all get together and be able to see our circumstances from an expanded vantage point. I present here two separate strategies to free us from the overwhelming influence of the forces for involution and plant us firmly on the path to freedom. One strategy is to minimize the influence of the forces for involution by a process I call unhooking. And the other is to begin to recondition your viewpoint, to be in line with those who already experience some aspects of the upcoming change of consciousness and can therefore not easily be influenced by the dark forces. First, let's look at unhooking. It's advisable to try to minimize the influence of the forces that are devoted to thwarting our evolution in consciousness. Here are three strategies that will begin to free your mind and body as much as possible from the Iron Age mentality. Unhook your mind from the corporate media, which is controlled by the government and big business, and find other sources of information produced by individuals or organizations that might have your best interest in mind. Frankly, if you trust governments and corporations, you're literally dead in the water. And I mean dead. They're totally controlled by the forces for involution, and for the most part, don't have your best interests in mind. Although there are many wonderful people working in these organizations, I know I spend most of my life coaching and training them. These organizations are controlled at the top by forces that don't have your consciousness, evolution, or even, according to their own documents, your continued existence in mind. Unhook your body, your family, and your community as much as possible from the government and corporate-controlled systems, like food, energy, and water. Form community and begin to take responsibility for one another. Actually, form a community that's not only devoted to helping people survive the collapse of the existing structures, but create a community dedicated to consciousness evolution. A creation like this will become one of the most powerful forces for pulling all of mankind into the warm, safe glow of the upcoming era. Unhook from fear and hate. These are the main tactics used by the forces for involution to keep you enslaved. Realize that your infinite consciousness, having experience as you. Eliminate fear, and you immediately escape the clutches of the Iron Age. Now let's look at three basic ideas that, if considered seriously and studied closely, would begin to recondition your psyche to enter the new era. Concepts presented here are ideas that will aid in the gradual expansion of your consciousness. And if they were to take hold in a community, they would completely change reality as we know it. One warning. Be aware that many of these ideas may contradict notions that you've held dear and dear your whole life. and when considering them might cause temporary confusion or discomfort. Simply relax. These are truths, and there's a part of you that knows they're truth. The problem is that these ideas could likely rub up against things that you were conditioned to believe to be true. All of these ideas are in line with those further along the path, and will help us see our situation from a higher perspective. Change engendered from these new perspectives, if you can begin to embrace them, will help you become a personal force for consciousness evolution. Expand exclusivity to inclusivity. Now I found, and you may have too, that as individuals become further away from the pre-conventional or conventional consciousness, their self-concept becomes larger and larger. From the childish feeling that you alone are self, that this body is you, through the feeling that your sense of self includes your family or a larger unit to which you might belong, all the way to thinking and acting as if your self includes the whole community, to seeing yourself as all humanity, to all life globally, to all life cosmically, or to see the concept of self in a larger and larger way. As your self enlarges and your concerns wrap around more people, places, and things, your consciousness naturally expands. By definition, the forces for involution constantly use to their advantage the commonly held conventional small self-concept of yourself being this physical body to turn us against one another. Their media and minions work to turn nations against one another, races against one another, sexes, religions, and even communities against one another. The commonly used strategy of divide and conquer no longer works as a ploy to distract you or demonize others. When you begin to see all humans as brothers and sisters, to be loved, helped, and protected as self, seeing yourself or working to see yourself and your concern for all of mankind, for all of your global inhabitants, works to expand your consciousness. Again, by definition, care for the world, not just yourself, and you will thwart the forces for involution and usher in the new era. Keep in mind that as each of us moves forward, we create what a boater would call a wake. And since we're all in actuality one thing, this wake pulls along all of human consciousness to an expanded viewpoint. So, you not only help yourself, you help all of us. The second idea is hold the concept that we are all equal. This is a hard one and represents the basic underpinning of the forces for involution strategy to keep us in place. Everything for them depends on us accepting that there must be a wealthy ruling class and a lower working or slave class. Although a middle class has been allowed to exist for short periods from time to time down through history, it's always troublesome and is eliminated usually by degeneration. From the Hammurabi Code through the time of the pharaohs, reinforced by Plato and still taught by the forces of involution today, is the notion that there are some that deserve more and are better, some that rule, and some that serve. Frankly, without this notion lodged in our psyches down through the millennia, we would not have put up with the oppression and lack that we have been forced to endure. Here's the truth. You will resonate with it as I say it. There is no one better than you, and no one worse. No one more loved, no one less loved. No one deserving of more, and no one deserving of less. Forces for Involution began our slide into the Iron Age by putting forth the premise that there were the upper class and the less fortunate class, the blue bloods and the great unwashed. And this notion, accepted by us, has allowed them to hold us in this reality of black for millenniums. Get rid of this concept first in your mind, then in the world, and you'll see how quickly things change for the better. Holding the concept that we are all equal, you'll begin to reconceptualize issues such as social justice. It'll move from a forces for involution conceptualization of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth to an all-encompassing social justice concept that makes sure that everyone has enough and no one has too much.